starting to get concerned that I've entered I don't know if you would call it what's it called? The word starts with RE and it means you go back to something, a remission, re you go back to it. You recall, recession, remission.
Any of those
Renaissance.
will work. We'll take any of those for the moment.
Anyways, you start off in life naked, of
Regression.
course. Regression, yes. You start off in life naked, covered in slime and internal stuff, and then for many years, I want to say maybe even 10 to 15, just when you're ready to go to sleep, you just go to sleep in whatever you're wearing, like you don't really care. Maybe there's some people who are like straight A students and got letter jackets and stuff, and they would like put on their like Dagwood pajamas or whatever. But eventually, you're like, I'm gonna like wear some night clothes, whatever that may be. Maybe that's even you just strip down to your underwear and a shirt. Maybe you sleep nude, whatever it is. But what I have started to notice and reflect on is like the our 5-year-old. She will not sleep alone again. There's a small time when she did, so we put her to bed, and often we'll fall asleep putting her to sleep. And
I
what this
remember that.
means is that we end up sleeping in our clothes. Well, I can't speak for Kim. I end up sleeping in my clothes a lot, and just like full on with all my shit in my pockets because I'm tired and I go to sleep. But I feel like, is this something I should be concerned about? Or is sleeping in my clothes as let me check the date, 47-year-old person, is this like fine? Or does this mean I need to up my medication dosage for my mental problems? What's the assessment?
I see nothing wrong with it as a parent of a young child. If that's most convenient for you, obviously there's many workarounds. You could probably just change clothes before you put the kid to bed. But if that's what you want to do, I think any parents of young children, like, it's more important that you get sleep, not exactly what you're wearing to sleep. So any goal of just achieving a deep sleep, whether it be in your clothes or when you have a small children, that's success in my book.
Take it
Okay.
when you can get it.
Yeah. Okay. Now this is good because there's another benefit is you don't have to get dressed in the morning. You're just ready to go.
Well, I think for a work from home job, that's definitely true. I think for like, I don't know, going out, like maybe you need, I don't maybe it just depends on like, how wrinkled you got yourself,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now the second domestic question I want to go over just briefly. So, my daughter Alejandra, her bike broke, and now we got her a new bike. But now we've got this old bike. What would you do with an old bike? Now I know we got 3 different countries, but like, what's the common practice? Do you just sort of like? Well, I'll tell you. Here in the Netherlands, I think what you do with an old bike is you go leave it unlocked somewhere.
Nature takes its course.
That's right. Yeah, the cycle continues.
I have two
Paying it
easy
forward.
answers here. Facebook Market, if you think you can sell it and you're willing to do it, if it's still worth something. Kids' bike are a fantastic resellable thing because they usually grow fast, so the bikes don't necessarily get a ton of use.
But
Maybe
yeah,
an extra damage first, but it's probably not completely worn out. And if it's either too much hassle to sell or it's not worth something or maybe has some issue, at least here we have the buy nothing Facebook groups, which are fantastic, where you just basically say, put a picture out there, you say, and someone will say like, I want it. They'll come pick it up. You can just leave it on, at least here in the US, we leave it on our porch. I don't know if you have a stump or something along those lines.
People
Maybe
taking
it's
stuff
just
off your porch already. Right?
maybe it's just a version of what you just said. Maybe everyone in Amsterdam is always working. If everything, Amsterdam is one big Facebook group where people are just taking things off of porches at all times. But here you do, and that way, at least usually you can find someone in your local area that needs it, which is a nice way to feel like, even if you're giving up some money, it just feels like, well, at least another child in the general area will like the bike and get some use of it. So you feel like you're, if you will, paying it forward. So those would be my two solutions.
Okay. How about there in Australia? Surely you don't just like throw it on the coral reef or something like that, right? There must be some.
Well,
or do you just
sometimes
do you call up Mortem Joe and he
sharks.
comes and picks it up from you? Like what happens?
No, we've got kind of the Australian version of like a Craigslist thing here called Gumtree, and it's like Craigslist. You can have your ads, and you say, "Whoa, I've got this thing. It's for sale. You know, $5 or whatever. Or you could just put stuff up for free, and people come out of the woodwork for it. So I'm sure there's definitely Facebook too. Yeah, I don't spend a lot of time on those, but yeah, I've given away a fair amount of stuff. And this last weekend, like I got a new monitor, and not for me, for one of my kids, because their monitor was dying. And I was looking for electronics recycling, and they've got people who will come and like take all of your electronics, no matter what they are, working or not. And so I was just getting, yeah. So there, it's like, and it's not a nonprofit. It's like a not for profit. You know, good. I don't know. They're trying to make the world a better place by recycling electronics that are still usable. So I'm like, this monitor doesn't work, but here's some Kindles that work. Or...
I think maybe we've come across yet another software defined talk sub industry, and I think globally we need to have a multi-sided platform. You know, maybe some aggregation theory. I don't know which direction it's going, but I want something that's called something like takemyfreeshit.com. And it's basically, you're going to go in there and give it geolocation permissions, and it'll list all of the ways that you can have people come and take your free shit. Like whether it's like old batteries, like maybe some leftover chicken that you might have, a rundown bicycle, just whatever it is. And you just basically take a picture and upload it to it, and then it disappears from your property. It's just gone.
All right, Cote, as real-time feedback here right from the chat, Michael has suggested freecycle.org, which I think pretty much does what you say, right? It's basically a nonprofit. It's a website where looks like you put pictures of stuff up, and looks like you just give it away. So I think one thing you said in there, I don't know if it had everything you said, but it had a lot. So free. So I would say Facebook Marketplace, the Buy Nothing. What was yours, Matt? Gumtree, FreeCycle. It's really just comes down to find the free website, the website in your area that is popular for giving away free stuff. I think that is because there is a sort of what do you call it, like mental kind of value to just getting rid of stuff out of your house. Yeah. I think there's a huge value, and it becomes very simple if it's just sort of like you post it, someone picks it up. So any of these sites are probably good, but finding one close by. So I think maybe Cote, maybe that's your assignment this week. And my guess is you just have to ask your wife. She'll be like, "Oh yeah, I use such and such." She'll probably know what it is. Yeah.
Well, I think definitely this bike is maybe on its third, fourth, even fifth owner. It's a little it's served. It's had a good life. So I'm thinking,
and those kids ride it hard.
Yeah, that's right. So I'm thinking definitely find some free site, or I might go to the Netherlands' #1 bike market, corner bike stand, with no luck. I'll see if it can re-enter the system there. But I promise I won't throw it in the canal like so many other people seem to, or maybe that happens accidentally. Well, speaking of global integrations, making things seamless, I was looking at our show notes, and it was thrilled to see that Brandon has done some extensive research on model context protocol, something I've been spending about a month now fucking around with, so to speak, to use the nomenclature. But here's how I want to go into this is now that you've read up on this a lot, Brandon. Tell us what this MCP stuff is. I want to hear the Brandon vision.
Well, I think I guess we would start with it's an Anthropic standard where and I think the name is bad. I feel like the name doesn't. I don't know if you felt that way, Coach. I just felt like it sort of just confused me. I was like, what does this mean? But I would just say, very simply, is it allows you to take some type of web service that you have today, you wrap it in an API that produces some JSON, and that JSON is very consumable by an LLM. And what's cool about it, and I guess this is the part that I didn't get till actually playing with it, it's sort of like it takes your LLM from maybe just being kind of like unable to talk to the outside world, at least talk to the applications, and gives it the ability to like do stuff, right? Like actually do things with things that have a MCP agent. Now, I will say this, today it's way too complicated for the normal people. Like people listening to this podcast can do it because you have to basically run a little agent Docker container on your server that runs, if you will, the integration. But you can see directionally what I think is what I like about it is it's sort of, if you will, kind of takes away the idea of just like, because mostly I've been using a lot of LLMs, like everyone, for editing documents and like kind of like learning about things, getting kind of like short write-ups, which is very useful. But this is sort of like the next layer. It's like, oh, instead of actually, if you will, typing in there, like what is the, write the git command to, if you will, commit this work and tell me how to do it, right? Instead of doing that, you can just kind of tell it to be like, oh, well, just do this, right? Just put this in Git for me. Yeah, submit, like do all the things that I need to do to have this committed to GitHub. And it's like, that's what I want. Like, I don't want to have to think about like the whole idea of translating all that. So that was the part where I like really kind of got it. I was like, oh, this is a natural language interface to anything that has like the protocol. Then you kind of go to the next level. It's like, oh, well, every website should have this. Like times when I don't want to have to like learn your website, I just want to like interact you from the LLM. So that was the part that like, I did not quite understand it was capable until actually using it. So I don't know, what was your experience?
Yeah, I think I haven't thought of the adding a natural language interface to like an API angle, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it is like, yeah, the name is weird. Model Context Protocol, and I think it's mostly, I don't really even know what, I guess the model is the AI part, and the context, there's one way of thinking about it that it brings in context from the rest of the world to the model, and the protocol part makes sense. But after, I think I mentioned last episode I was on, I started doing some half-ass vibe coding, like learning how programming, and I've been doing more since then. And it's pretty much all around building these MCP servers, as they confusingly call them. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward and a little less mystical once you actually do it, like all things written in a specification. And you've got like, I think what you were probably describing, you have tools, which I would just call a plugin, right? Like you have, like if you imagine using Claude and you get a plugin and here's some new functionality that can do something, and it can call out to the internet or do stuff. There's like some semantic thinking they have about like what you use a tool for versus the other, I don't even know what they call them, entities. So you've got this other thing called a resource, which is basically just a chunk of data, whether it's a file or a database or like an IDE that you're looking at. It's like something that you would retrieve through URLs. And then there's something called a prompt. And this is the most confusing thing, which is it's if you're in Claude, for example, you call out to a prompt, to a MCP prompt, and it returns a prompt that Claude runs, which I don't really know what you're supposed to do with that. I guess maybe it's like a recipe that you would run. And you could imagine, like, if you're dynamically creating this prompt, I don't know, it's a way to like drive the prompt. Now there's some other things that they don't really, there's something called sampling where your plugin can call back to the model and query it, but I don't think anyone really implements that.
But I don't, but sometimes I just wonder, like, if ever, like software architects just make it too complicated. It's like, just borrow from like video gaming. It's like, I don't know. I think of it almost just as like power ups. It's like, oh, I install this. Now my Claude can do more. Like now it can like do all this stuff in GitHub for me. Right. Oh, I saw this. Now it can like do all these things on my Mac for me. And it's just sort of like, I just think it's sort of like to me, that's the part that is like interesting. And also the part, like, I sort of like, probably like a lot of people, like, I'd hate all the talk about agent and agentic, right? It's always like, what are you talking about? But if you say to me what this is like, oh, through these MCP agents, right, I can essentially allow the LLM to do a bunch of stuff. And I if you will, I'm still being the person typing it in, I'm directing everyone, or all the, if you will, directing it what to do. So I'm the agent in that side. And so it's like that part, now I kind of get it. It's like, okay, and from that, once you're kind of sitting there doing stuff, you could see like, okay, I now kind of get it. You could have a computer driving this now as well. That's quote unquote an agent, but it's sort of like, I don't know. I feel like that's like a necessary step to be like sitting down at Claude with something with a whole bunch of MCPs installed and asking things to get done, sort of like, if you will, makes the idea of this agent very tangible, right? Whereas
Yeah,
before it was just like, oh, it just like magically does something in the internet.
and as with all things in AI land, programming is the first example of this, right? So I think probably all of us have experienced what we're talking about in action, where you, well, I assume Cursor kind of does this as well, but like you can open up Chat GPT and like bind it to IntelliJ, and then it just can look at IntelliJ. So it treats it as a thing it can connect to, and it can write code in it and tell you what's going on. And so that is what's going on with MCP, right? It's just a way of connecting to other stuff and doing things with it. And I think, I mean, you started off with kind of bumping up against the part that I've only recently started thinking about, is like what's strategy and business wise interesting about MCP is that the way that the AI determines when and what to call is left unspecified. Like that part is not part of the spec as far as I can tell. And so that's what's interesting there, is like, so you have all these people writing plugins, which technically is called an MCP server, very confusingly. The server is actually the whatever, doesn't matter. But you've got all these people writing plugins, kind of bringing value, bringing functionality. And then it kind of sets up someone like Claude or other people nicely, of like, whoever can write the best way of using those tools and reasoning through it has some kind of competitive advantage. And it also means that, like, if you want to actually use MCP stuff, you need some model that knows how to call all these tools and do it, which is actually mysterious and spooky, right? Like how does all that work?
Doesn't this just kind of further lessen the value of the LLMs? I mean,
well, no, that's the point that I'm making, is it could, but then also like you could have proprietary stuff in your LLM that figured out how to do calling out to tools more interestingly, right? Like, or not, right? You could even not give that part away. Like you could have a whole separate little thing that's driving like how you keep track of and do these tools, and then also how you implement it. Like, so if you imagine, if you're using this to do like transactional stuff or whatever, you've got to like build in all sorts of stuff into whatever client's doing it. But yes, you would figure the LLMs.
But I do think another way I like to think of it is sort of like, at least in the workflows I've been personally doing, it is sort of like, you know, you have LLM, take Docker. We've been talking about that one a lot, right? Sort of like, I will often ask the LLM, it's like, you know, write me a Docker file, tell me how to run the Docker file. How do I start this? How do I stop it? What should, you know, and sort of it kind of, if you will, is guiding me, giving me the commands, and then I'll run them, right? And then, as you were alluding to, the IDEs now will often, they'll show you the command, and then you could say run, right? And they'll run it to the command line, certainly in Cursor. But this is like the next level where it's like, oh, wait a minute. I don't have to do any, like that whole layer of like asking, getting a command to run. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just tell it, like, do this for me. And it just does it all. And I can do it in natural language. I don't have to like remember. So if you think about Git, think about Docker, the immediate thing I thought of, like think about AWS. And I think this applies to all the cloud vendors. It's like, configuring AWS is usually about learning all the configuration screens, what they actually mean, and which fields to fill out when you're like setting something up, right? It's not necessarily understanding the core concepts. Like once you kind of get that, it's more like, oh, I got 10 screens I got to go through to set up a network or whatever, VPC. And it's like, oh, like it would be great if there was, if you will, and I'm sure they're working on it, like an MCP for AWS, right? Where I could just tell it, like, set all this up, do all of this for me, and let it figure it out. That way I don't want to have to learn all the screens. Like, I told you what I want to do. You figure out all the, because like, I mean, again, not picking on AWS. It's sort of like, sometimes it's a drop down. Sometimes it's a field you have to complete. Sometimes it's a radio, but you know, it's like just all the, if you will, knobs and switches. It's like, I don't really want to learn all that. It'd be great if you could just do all that for me. So I think that to me is like the obvious, like natural language interfaces into all of these IT tools. So we don't have to, like, you know, if we'll become, you know, masters of the trivia of all the different commands. Like, I think that is a fantastic use case.
Yeah. And I think that's definitely one of the intentions. And that's the, what makes it the agentic part, is stringing together calls to all these different tools and reasoning and orchestrating them. But you know, in my little, area of interest, playing Dungeons and Dragons, there's another behavior that's interesting to look at. So like a lot of what when you're using it for programming and stuff we've been talking about is kind of like, you're like telling it what to do and what you want to do. But like you can also make you make these little plugins that, for example, will randomly tell you like what kind of mood a non-playing character is in. And then so when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you go into Claude and you're like, you encounter an NPC and it figures out that it has this tool that will tell you what mood an NPC's in, and it'll just call it. Like you don't have to tell it like look up what mood the NPC's in. So there's an interesting like, and I think that's maybe where like what I'm thinking about as far as like there could be some proprietary value in how the model knows to call various tools out there, right? So it's somehow interpreting that I'm telling a story. Someone's walking down the street. They're in a village. There's a lot of buildings in a village. I wonder what kind of buildings there are. Oh, look, I have a tool here that tells me randomly what kind of buildings there are. And it knows to like go out and use that tool or not. Maybe when does it not call it? But anyways, it's just sort of like offering up all these things to it. Now, that said, the Claude implementation, ironically, is pretty terrible. Like,
yeah. No, I think what you're the part like with all of these new tools is the configuration is just mind numbing, right? I feel like it is, right? You have to, and I think this is the first kind of thought I had around like, well, for this to gain any real traction, it's like, it doesn't seem like there's any reason everyone needs to be standing up. You said a server, but what you're really doing is you're standing up a tiny, for me, most cases, a tiny Docker server that's simply, if you will, taking your request, going to that server, and then going out and actually making the request like to GitHub or something like that. So it's like really what you would think for this to gain some adoption would just be like, well, GitHub, or I'm just picking any of them, like they should just have this configured on their site ready to go. Like I should be able to just authenticate to the, if you will, I want to authenticate and I want to talk to GitHub from the LLM, and just like behind the scenes, like if you can say like GitHub is running the MCP agent, or they've, if you will, they've created their own, an API, like a native part of that kind of sits within it. So it's sort of like, I think to myself, like ideally, like every SaaS service would wrap itself and, if you will, provide this interface, just like they provide a web-based interface, right? You could just be like, okay, yeah, if you want to talk to me from an LLM, here's how you do it. Here's the way to do it. That way you don't have to run all these servers yourself. Because otherwise it's just like, I mean, no one's gonna, like, I think you get a couple of these going and you're just sort of like, at some point you're just like, well, that's enough. You don't want to just keep, spinning up Docker servers. And it's like, so that part, you can see where it could go, but you can also see where like, no one's going to like, unless it gets the adoption where people are going to do that on their websites, I feel like it may not get adopted at all.
Well, it'll come from like Salesforce, right? They've been all talking about agents and stuff. Wouldn't they be a naturalish candidate for this? Which of course opens the door for every Salesforce engineer in the world to become an expert in tuning the Salesforce,
is Einstein
MCP
or whatever it is,
just for your particular deployment of Salesforce, because Salesforce is where AI goes to like struggle.
I think for sure, but like we should say like in the very appropriate timing. So today was the GCP keynote on Google Cloud Next there, and they announced the agent to agent protocol, also known as A2A. And so what this is doing, and they said it's one of these things where, of course, at the beginning everyone gets along. They say it's a complement in MCP, but I'll just read, because it just came out, so I have not dug into it. I don't know exactly what it does, but like conceptually, the definition they give here is, quote, agents can advertise their capabilities using and, quote, agent card in JSON format, allowing the client agent to identify the best agent that can perform a task and leverage A to A to communicate with the remote agent, end quote. So it's a lot. That's a very dense sentence, but like, and they announced a bunch of partners. I think Salesforce was on there, and they actually had Benioff speak and give a little thing. But that's the idea, is that like, I guess, in this world, everything would present an agent card, which is like MCP's YAML. I don't know what they call it, Cote. Maybe you do. It's just basically, gives a set of things it can do. And then from that, you can start interacting. So I don't know, like it remains to be seen, like, will MCP and agent cards like coexist? Will they be competing standards? Obviously, Google's a big company. They've got 50, large websites doing it. Do other people do that? But you kind of see where it's going now, though. Like somebody, to your original point, Matt, it's like everyone that has a SaaS is going to be asked to like implement one of these or both of these protocols. And at least initially, that's going to be how you ultimately communicate from LLMs. But of course, like even within that, like the authentication gets pretty wonky when you're actually using it, because the LLM starts to ask you questions like, do I have permission to do it? And like, have you configured your tokens? So there's a lot to be worked out from a usability standpoint, I think.
Yeah, especially security. I mean, just simply logging into things is weird. But in MCP they're working on something. I haven't really read it, but I'll have to look at the we should have another service at Software Defined Talk, which is called just quick name check. And when anything that has the word agent to agent or A to A, I would be like, listen, there was this movie about druggies in what was the movie? It's got what's her name? She and at the end there's a scene where it's just ass to ass. And so like from now on, when I think about your AI interoperability, that's all I'm going to think about is that scene at the end of what movie am I thinking of? It's got some fancy sounding name, even though it's all about like it's got McConnell. No, anyways,
yeah.
If only we had a way of looking things up like this.
Yeah, but I know what you're. I know what you refer to. But yeah, I don't know. It's naming's hard. I guess we should say.
That said, I'll have to look over it. They spent a lot of time talking about how it's different than MCP. Which
well, before you go, I think you were thinking of Requiem for a Dream, maybe.
There you go. Exactly.
So there you go. So don't. Maybe not everyone. That's definitely not safe for work. Probably not a movie you need to talk about with your coworkers.
I wasn't going to bring that up,
but go on.
I was looking through it really quickly while I was putting one of my children to bed. You see, I've managed to not fall asleep in my clothes. But I wanted to ask you two, since I've been out of the whole programming scene for a while, there was a spec or a schema for the A to A, and it was written in like JSON. It was like, here's our schema. It's in JSON. And I wanted to ask, is this like what the kids are doing nowadays? When you do stuff, is it all in JSON? Because that's the feeling I'm getting is it's just like JSON everywhere. Like
yeah,
I thought,
pretty much.
Like I thought it was YAML everywhere, but now when you're at the programming, the application layer, is it JSON? And then when you're at the DevOps layer, you're YAMLing. Is that what's going on?
Yeah,
humans don't like all. I mean, there is a whole. Well, I guess there's a lot of comments in it, huh? I mean, I feel like there's a whole README. I don't know. I guess maybe to be more fair about it, there's a JSON specification coupled with, like all the GitHub stuff, like
Oh yeah, of course.
So
and I could see that it would be totally cool because you could take a protocol or an interface spec like that and just easily load it up into some tool and just auto generate the shit out of things, right? Like, which should be fine. But and whatever.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I guess I haven't really thought about it. Yeah, I guess that's what people do now. It's sort of my always question is like, does anyone actually write all this JSON by hand, or is everything just generated? Is even the specifications generated?
As I was washing some dishes, I was thinking over this, and I was thinking, man, that would be I had the same exact thought, Brandon. I was like, I bet they just have a tool and it just spits this out so that you don't have to like, because like,
so this one is, there's 2,000 lines of JSON, obviously a lot of brackets here. So it's like, that would actually be an interesting question. How, I don't know, maybe Matt, you know the answer. How did this all get how did the original version of this get generated? Like, did someone like does anyone actually sit down and write? Did they just write a little part and then you just start to like ask it to then like recursively start adding to itself?
Well, it was probably just a dictionary, nested hash tables, and you said, to JSON, and ta-da, it's done.
Yeah, you could use like Omni Outliner, basically.
So really, to your question, then maybe, I don't know, I guess you could use other languages, but like every specification starts in Python, maybe, right? You just
it doesn't have to be Python, but it starts
something
as like
you created in something,
right?
Right, but like
nested hash tables. That's all it is.
And then you just create so I don't know. It's just kind of funny. It's like in the end, like not like only machines ever read this, but everything is like generated. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Or maybe just ask an LLM to generate the JSON for you. So it literally is, everything's just recursive.
Pretty
at some point.
much.
But so I guess
did that yesterday.
I guess what I'm hearing here is it's not like there was some, IEEE or W3C meeting where they went over this, but like if you're writing some framework and you're going to specify like what a schema is, you're going to be publishing a JSON file. Is that like a normal thing, or there's nothing else that you publish?
Okay. And now I'm thinking to myself, how did people write the XML specifications back in the day? What were people doing then?
JSON, right?
Yeah, how did that get written? Are people writing that? I don't know. Maybe so.
Back in the good old days. But no, I don't want to do that anymore.
But I did want,
JSON, so.
I wanted your take on this. So maybe we can put on some Ben Thompson, like put aside the technical details for a second. It's like, okay, well, like everyone's wondering about the business models of LLMs. And so where I was thinking was like, let's just put all the implementation to the side. Just assume we live in a world where it's like every website that does something has some type of agent to agent or MCP interface, right? Then if that is the case, in my mind, it's like, that seems to set up this idea of like kind of affiliate marketing kind of based business models, where it's like you're in the LLM and you're like, hey, I want to book I'm taking a trip to Amsterdam and on these dates, find all the flights and find all the hotels and show me the rental car, build me a whole itinerary for it, right? So instead of like, so when you think of it, how you do today, you probably go to 2 or 3 websites.
Yep.
Comparison shop, you get it, but it's like sort of like, so this isn't like, and this is, I want to draw a distinction here. I'm not asking an agent to do it. I'm the one sitting in front of the LM doing that. So I want all of this information in front of me, right? And then I'll probably go back and forth and be like, oh, is there a cheaper flight? And kind of do some adjust my dates to get the best prices, right? And then at some point I'm like, okay, I want all of this, right? And I just say, okay, I say to itself, like, I have accounts with, like, for you, maybe Cote, it's what's your favorite airline? I was about to say American.
KLM.
KLM. But for you, it'd be like, yeah, here's like, there's a KLM agent, right? Or so you just say, okay, book it on KLM, and maybe even takes you to the screen where you just have to hit accept, right? And the same thing for the hotels. So my thought was just sort of like, oh, like, if you will, it's like, these are like a nice interface that just does exactly what I want. It strips away all the like nonsense of the websites that I have to use. But in the end, like, you could see, if you will, like if it's ChatGPT, for example, taking a small commission. It's like, hey, I helped the person book all of this, and I actually made the reservation, and they were ultimately the ones that clicked buy. But like, give me, if you will, give me 5% of that transaction or 10% of that transaction.
Yeah.
Because like to me, it's sort of like, oh, this could be the business model. Like, this is sort of how. And the whole thing is predicated on, it's cleaner to do all this in an LLM than it is to like go use all of these websites on their own. So I don't know, is that like a, if you will, not advertising business model, but it's a affiliate business model that's
it's the new travel agent.
but I also get to the point, like the same thing with like Salesforce, right? It's sort of like, I want to interact. I don't want to use the Salesforce. I mean, that's probably the one I don't want to use the most, right? I don't want to use the Salesforce API, right? I just want like, just do this, right? So it's sort of like, if you will, like that's the value of it, right? So it's not, if you will, the LLM just spitting back, like answering questions. It's the fact that if you will, it's sort of like the natural language interface to all these things. And if it does do that well, it does seem like the various websites would be able to compensate the LLM for doing all of that for them. So it's sort of like a nice, I don't know, to my mind, it's like a simple consumer-based model that could pay, if you will, that could help pay for using LLMs.
Yeah, I haven't like thought about that, but yeah, that makes perfect sense. You haven't got another business model on the table, and then I mean, you think of it analogously. Yeah, like you think of it analogously as like the App Store and Amazon, right? Where like you basically have. I was making multi-sided platform jokes earlier, but you've got a listing of stuff that people are searching for, and you can take a commission whenever they use each thing. And then you can also get paid to more prominently show other people's stuff. So, for example, maybe KLM pays more money to have their stuff easier to use and more integrated. And of course, then you will enter the world of whatever they'll end up calling it, side loading your little plugins. So you could always, add the .org like free way of doing stuff, but then, people will just think it's a lot easier. I've got my account set up. I'm just going to click on this and
my God.
pay for
I
it.
mean, I just heard the gates opening to the enshittification of the platform already. Right?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I think you can look at it one of two ways. I think you could say like certainly there's a way to be abused, but like I also think it's like it's not so much shitification. Think about all the apps on your iPhone, right? That's kind of what they are. I mean, they're, if you will, they're just human. If you will, they're human-based interfaces. I even talked the other day about like quick links, right? Like I finally started using quick links on my iPhone. It's like sometimes like there's just these small apps. You just do 2 or 3 things with them, but you still have to like go into there, find the right, learn their UI. And it's like, oh, this quick link is nice. Where like, I think I talked about Venmo. It's like, oh, scan to pay. That's all I want to do. Right. And it's like, in some ways, like these things can also be like the clean interface, right? It's sort of like, I just want to do this. Like Amazon's a great example. Like, I bet you everybody has their own way of like searching Amazon, but I'm always sort of like, you put in what you're looking for. You kind of have to ignore the sponsored ads at the beginning. You're starting to look for like a certain amount, something that's been recommended, but maybe has like a lot of recommendations that you don't think are easily spammed. Then you click on it. You look at the price. Where's it coming from? Maybe you check some of the reviews to see if it looks like legit, right? You kind of go through this whole process before you actually buy something. And it's like,
right.
No, I would rather like the LM do all of that for me, right? Like I want a new thing.
The problem though is the LLM comes from Amazon, which means you're going to say, show me, kids bikes. And what's going to happen is Amazon will be like, oh, you want to be at the top of the search results for kids bikes? You're going to pay us. And then you're like, and then of course there'll be like 5,000 people who will list the same product under different company names, so they get more hits in the search engine, and you're gonna use this agent, and it's just gonna show you trash, right? And
it could though, but I do think you have in between there, right? You do have the agent, and this is the belief, right? I mean, I don't know if it'll do, but you have this is where the LLM does the magic, right? It's sort of like, oh, it can like scan through all the crap and be like, oh, I'm talking to Brandon. I know he wants to see this, or like I'm good at querying it that way. Because I do think, I don't know, just sort of like getting a lot of this, if you will, it's almost like the user interface is in the way. If we don't have to do it, if I could talk to like just natural language and it actually worked, there's a ton of value there. And again, back to maybe, again, like I think the buying stuff, I agree with you, has a lot of problems, but it's just kind of back to like, and Git, maybe we'll talk about that in a second, but it's like, I don't want to learn all these crazy commands in Git. I just want you to do the thing. And so it's like that same metaphor, but for all the websites. And like, you're right. I mean, certainly Amazon could like, if you will, make it really hard or even not even provide it because they just feel like they want you to come to the website.
They're already trying to provide it, right? They've got their, was it Q or Rufus or, Bing?
Yeah, that's definitely
whatever
not
their
good.
search
That's
tool
definitely
is.
not it.
But that's the path, right? They're like, oh, can our AI find you what you need today? And soon it'll just be like, oh, we've turned this thing also into an agent that plugs into it, so you can use this, so your AI could talk to our AI, and it's like, I still know you suck, right?
Well, then maybe though, okay, so maybe being a slightly different take would be like, well, maybe, okay, if Amazon's so kind of entrenched in the way they're doing it, maybe it opens up like kind of all the Shopify sites. They just like the Shopify sites that are just trying to sell one item that's really good. And all they care about is they don't care how you find them. They're just like, we just want to sell you our widget at a good price. And so maybe that's the thing that the LLMs, I'm not going to go search 50 sites or 100 sites, but maybe behind the scenes, they're like, oh, he's looking for shoes like this. Forget Amazon. I'm going to this place. I'm going to this area. And this is going to give a really clean set of results.
I like this. This is like taking back control of
exactly
of like advertisers. Now you can advertise to yourself. Like you have your own profile of like what you're interested in and you have an agent that goes out on your behalf.
Well, I thought a little bit like
I'm interested in belt buckles.
Right.
And we'll
I was thinking a little bit like Wirecutter. I don't know that sort of has mixed reviews these days, but I guess when it came out, I thought like a Wirecutter recommendation with a link in it, that was fine. I was like, these people have studied TVs or whatever it is or vacuums at such a length. I have no idea. I'm just clicking on the link. I'm going to buy that one. So it's the same idea. It's like incentivizes someone producing like really high quality recommendations and making it really easy to buy. And that's the value, right? Like, could we get through LLMs? Could we have the LLM kind of do that for us?
Whew. I'm just
Maybe overly optimistic.
no. Well, I'm flashing forward to that Neil Stephenson book Dodge, where rich people had the good LLMs.
Yeah.
and the plebes get like the ones that are nothing but trash recommendations and AIs, and Google AI results, right? And so you will need to pay to have a good curator in the future because there's so much noise and trash.
Mm-hmm. But maybe, okay, so maybe that brings us to like this next topic, because maybe the Git is a good example of this. So like I think Matt, you posted this one. It was 20 years of Git. So it's basically the history of like where it came from and why it was. And I thought one of the quotes that really stood out to me was, quote, "It's important to understand that this is why Git was created, not to be a version control system really, but fundamentally to be a better way to do patches and tarballs. Snapshot a set of files and show differences that can be discussed." So I just thought of another quote that I thought was funny was this one was, quote, "This wasn't a system that someone sat down and meticulously designed from a usability standpoint from day one." And I think to me, those quotes just resonate perfectly. And I thought to myself, it is what it is. Git's here. I mean, I feel like it's been way too complicated, but I just find myself like I'm using the LLM as my front end to Git. I'm not learning anything. I'm just sort of like asking what commands to run to do it. And I think this is maybe, the path forward is like, could a natural based interface, kind of all these MCPs going forward. I think to me, like this is the way it should be going forward. Like we shouldn't have to like do all these crazy command line stuff. So there isn't obviously any advertising here. It's just sort of making it simpler to use. So I don't know, Matt, maybe you're the right person to ask here. It's sort of like, do you ever ask the LLMs how to use Git, or is it all so ingrained in you? You just know how to do everything?
Oh, no. I mean, I consider myself an intermediate level user of Git. Like I feel like I know 95% of what you could do. But I also know that I'm not going to do most of it because I don't know how to do it well or how to do it right. Right. I mean, I look at some commands like bisect. I'm like, cool. No. Right. It's just like, that's not for me. I mean, I get what they're doing, but I'm probably going to go back to the workflows that I understand to do similar efforts. I mean, Git has some amazingly powerful commands, but the UI UX experience is, it's trash. And that's always been the complaint. Well, not always, but that's the cool kids complaint about Git is like, yeah, there are lots of UI replacements for it, and there are CLI alternatives that are still the same backend that are starting to gain popularity. But yeah, if AI wants to do it, I see, and that's kind of the point where I would ask AI like, hey, I need to, merge these three branches and move this one onto that one before I merge it to this one. And it would hopefully show me what it's going to try to do. And I at least feel like at this stage, I could reason over what it's doing. And I'd be like, okay, let's do that. But it's still, it's still really complicated.
Right. But I mean, like today in Cursor, right, it'll do it and it will show you the commands, right?
Yeah. But like what you can show me the commands, but they're still terrible commands.
That's what I'm saying. But like what I find is like, I don't really, I guess what I've learned about myself is like, I don't really need them to show me the commands because I don't have any idea of knowing they're right. So I'm just going to say, do it. Like, I don't, because I mean, you're just sort of like, well, it's like, I don't know. Like, especially something you just talked about there, which is like, I don't know, we'll call it reasonably complex, like merge this, do that. And it's like, you're just going to be like, okay, try it. So that's the part where I'm just like, no, I just want, because there's really only two paths. There's either, and this kind of, the way they kind of talked about this, like this is written from like almost like a love letter to Git, right? It's like, oh, this is so great. I just always thought to myself, this thing is a tool built by developers for developers. And I think it's even complicated for skilled developers. So I'm just sort of like, man, I've been thinking for a long time. It's like someone needs to just take a fresh look at this, but like probably not. That ship has sailed. And it's like, well, in lieu of that, just put the LLM on top of it. And like, I don't care what it does behind the scenes, whatever crazy commands it needs to do. It's like, fine, just do it. So so I don't know. So that's sort of like, it's just kind of, if you will, all this legacy software. You can think of the same thing of taxes and all this other stuff. It's like, if we can't rewrite it, maybe we can just make the LLM learn it, and then we don't have to learn it. Like maybe that's where I want to go.
Brandon, I know you love asking little questions of ChatGPT and other things. You should next time you want to entertain yourself, you should sit down and say, design the ideal version control system oriented around user experience and like understandability, and like see what it comes up with. And I would predict that it will just use like normal words for things. There won't be words like bisect or whatever.
Sometimes sometimes those scientific words are the right words. Sometimes
sure.
you need to have the most accurate word. Because I don't think that's. Well,
I like words. It just seems like it just seems like version control systems get a little esoteric and weird. We're really like a lot of what you're wanting to do is like, I want to make sure that I don't lose this file. So put that in a hyphen command. And then like, I want the version of the file from 5 versions ago. Can you get that for me? And then like, every now and then you want to be like, I want to work on 2 different versions of this file at once, and then be able to like pick the one that I want. And
or just simple, like what has changed, what's latest, all this kind of stuff. Well, here, we'll do a little, because I took a little poll in the Software Defined Talk Slack. So maybe you guys would like to get your take. And as we kind of think about it's like, so something fairly simple. I was setting up various machines about like how to authenticate into GitHub, probably applies to GitLab as well. So I was just sort of like, well, what is the best way? Because there's like 1,000 different ways to do it. So Cote, you're setting up a machine for the first time. You need to authenticate and do your Git work. How do you set it up to authenticate?
What do I do? Well, one, I don't do a lot of Git work, but every time.
But if you have to, like you're doing because the other day, I actually sent you a pull request in true Software Defined Talk, so I know you're in there, and I know you're doing your little side projects. What do you do? You're I think this is a great example. This is a great. Sure. I know you don't do it a lot, but what would you do?
I think I really don't remember, but I feel like I always have to search on Google and then. Go to GitHub deep down into some link, and then I like
developer settings, which is like 3 levels deep, right? You had to go like user, developer settings, and then you're faced with a whole bunch of options, right?
Right, and then I have to like copy and paste something and go to the command line, and I'm never really sure what's happening, and yet it involves security and keys, and so then whatever that is, that's what I do.
All right, well, let's go to Matt. Matt, how do you do? Matt, you probably have a workflow. How do you set up your fresh machine? You need to authenticate into your GitHub account. What do you do?
Well, let's see. The thing is, I probably just cargo culted whatever I had before. So I think I'm still using SSH keys to authenticate, because I think that's how I responded in the polls. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure I just have SSH keys associated with Git.
All right. So here are the results. I asked everyone in Software Defined Talk Slack how they did it. So 70% use SSH keys, right? 7% use personal access tokens. 7% also use the classic tokens. This is in GitHub. And then 15% use the GitHub CLI. So that's where you do like GH auth login. So you basically just log in, using your credentials in there. So what's interesting about it, so I did ask the LLM. And so basically they give you like a full matrix of different ways and like pros and cons. Like from my reading, it feels like the GitHub people want you to use personal access tokens, right? Because they're very fine grained, and that you should actually do it. But they're kind of a pain in the ass, right? Because you sort of like have to generate them. They're only one time. It's unclear. Like I think to most people, when they get saved on your Mac, I think even like pretty smart people won't know where they're saved, because they go into the keychain inside of Mac OS, which is like super easy to forget about. They want them to expire. So of course, when they expire, then you have to like, fix them. You have to remember where they are. So that's a whole nother thing. So then you're back to like what you said, Cote. It's like, well, a lot of people just want to use SSH keys. Again, its own set of problems, because it's sort of not necessarily secure on your machine, although you can make it a pass. So all of this is just, to me, it's just like, wow. Like I just kind of come back to like, this is the level of complexity of just sort of like, we haven't even done anything yet, right? We
Yeah.
haven't
And,
even
and
like, if you will, committed one file, and it's just like we have so many options of doing it. And so it's like I just want the LLMs to figure all of this out, and I think
and
authentication is a great place to start.
I know this is a wrong question, but like, can I just use a username and password? And
No,
maybe
you can't,
like a
because
one time
GitHub,
like
right? So you would think, right? Because like, why not just like log? Because it'll prompt you. It will tell you if you put in your username and password. It will tell you that has been deprecated as of like several years ago, and then they'll then recommend personal access tokens. But I think based on this survey, most people don't use those. Most people use SSH keys, right? So it's sort of like it just becomes a nightmare of configuration of authentication issues.
weird.
And so it's sort of like I guess I think about this and again, we're picking on Git. I don't mean it. It's obviously very successful in many ways. So kudos to everyone who worked on that. But I just kind of come back to it's like, no, this is a place where the LLMs, I would like them to just figure this stuff out. I don't want to like be messing with all of these tokens, right? And figuring all this stuff out. So I hope the future is the LLM. If we can't rewrite Git, I hope the LLM can do all this work for me.
Finally, 514 episodes in, and Brandon, thanks to the Git creators. Thanks for all the work that you did. I appreciate it.
Well, I have to give them, I mean, they're dominant, right? It's so, it's just one of those things. I guess I'm sad that it's won out because I feel like it's just the wrong way. But anyway, it is what it is. People love it. So,
I'm going through the GitHub docs and they just kind of gloss over it.
Oh my, well, amen to that, right? They sort of wave their hands on, because also the SSH settings are in a different area than the personal access tokens, right? And also the fact that they're not willing, they tell you not to use the classic tokens, but the classic tokens are sitting right there. They
don't even tell you anything.
So it's just,
it goes from create an account in the web UI and then go onto your machine and create a repository and push stuff. I'm like, you missed a step in there.
Totally. Absolutely. And this is the whole, like, I mean, this is state of the art, right? This is the state of the art source control version that we want every new developer coming on board. We want them to learn this. And it's like literally you're immediately sent to access management hell on the first day of your job.
No, they don't even
something.
visit hell. They're like, there's no hell here.
Skip over that.
Exactly.
You have to discover it on your own and go retrieve the magic keys and then emerge again in order to use it. Well, speaking of places where there is no hell, is there any bureaucracy this episode?
A couple quick things here. Somebody posted, funny enough, there's a site called getjobs.dev. So people basically, if you're looking for a job, I think a lot of people are looking for a job. If you're looking for it's open source jobs. I think it's loosely affiliated with CNCF, or like, I think that's where I got it. But anyway, I just wanted to put it in there. If you're looking for a job, check there. Michael already mentioned FreeCycle. So that sounds like the free site everyone should use to like get rid of all the stuff and junk in their house. And then finally, if you want a sticker, all you have to do is send your postal address to stickers@softwaredefinedtalk.com. Happy to send you a sticker anywhere in the world. And finally, we're always looking for sponsors. We've had some people reach out, probably based on our great listeners recommending us. So if you think your product or service needs a Software Defined Talk ad, email your marketing people. Tell them to talk to me, and we'll work something out. So do all that for me.
And if you don't want to email the marketing people, but you have money you want to pay us, I'm sure we could figure that out too.
Even better.
We'll give you Cote's phone number.
That's better. Right. I got a U.S. and a Netherlands one, and I might answer it. Texting is preferred. That would be better. Well, there's several conferences coming up. One, not so much a conference, but I don't know. It's kind of like our annual What's Going On with Tanzu update. And it's going to be online April 16th at 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Pacific time, California time. And I'm emceeing it, and I do a little interview. I'm going to do an interview with our general manager, but you can register for that for free. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/4, no, that's incorrect. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/514, you can find a link to it in the conferences section. And there's other conferences. There's DevOps Days Atlanta coming up sometime soon on April 29th to 30th. There's also Cloud Foundry Day hosted by my work in Palo Alto, May 14th. We have a workshop going over our AI server stuff how we do private cloud AI stuff the day before that on May 13th. If you want to go to it, I'll put a link to that there too. Then there's NDC Oslo, May 21st to 23rd. I'll be speaking there, and I forget the date, but I'm also speaking at SRE Day, as we Americans would say, Cologne or Köln, as other people say. And there's probably some other conferences, but you can find those conferences and those other ones. You should definitely check out the ones about my work. If you go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/514. Speaking of things that you should check out for sure, Matt Ray, what should people check out this week? What do you have to recommend?
So I'm a big fan of the Search Engine Podcast, and they had a recent episode that I think was like a cross post with Planet Money, or maybe called the Meme Coin Casino, where they kind of got to they dive into the world of meme coins and essentially like what they're all about, and it was kind of just eye-opening and revolting at the same time. So I learned that there are at the time of the podcast at least 5 million meme coins out there, and
Whoa,
thousands a day are being added, because essentially it's just like, I don't know, casino spam. It's bizarre, but it's the episode made me really think about like what kind of dead end we're headed down as an economy. But anywho, a little light listening, always a good podcast. Like and subscribe.
Sounds like a audio version of when I log into Twitter. It's just a bunch of weird stuff.
Very much so.
Oh yeah. Well, do you have something equally uplifting or to recommend, Brandon?
Well, I think uplifting, this is not my recommendation, but we didn't get to it, and it really doesn't deserve a long discussion. I just want to say that the person that wrote this, a love letter to CSV format, I just want to say that this is my spiritual.
Was it you, Brandon?
I wish I could say I did it. I don't know. I can't pronounce his, but it's a great read. He gives 8 reasons why CSV. And I just want to say, when the time comes, you, my friend, are going to get the keynote invitation to LegacyConf. This is the kind of content I want to see. So it's a fantastic read. But I'll let the listeners check that out on their own. Now, my recommendation this week is something very simple. I finally bought a car battery tester. My car batteries seem to be kind of flaky, and normally I just take it to the a mechanic or something, and they just tell me something and I believe it and they replace it. And so I thought to myself, like, I want to actually know what's going on. So it was very cheap, bought on Amazon, and it was very nice because it gave me a bunch of the readings. I assume this is something like the technicians use, and it was like, oh, finally, I'm an educated battery user. And then of course, what I do, I just went to Costco, bought a new battery, and putting in a battery in your car is not very complicated. So I felt like I both accomplished something, and I actually now understand what's going on with my car battery. So it's worth, I think this was like a $20 thing. So now, of course, I can like actually diagnose whether it's a battery problem, or if it isn't, I'll at least know going in that I'm going to get the old alternator treatment. I'm getting the high price alternator replaced, but like, I like it. So I feel like now I'm a more educated car driver. So if you're interested in that, get yourself a battery tester. And the link that I got is in the show notes there.
I'm gonna have to check that out because apparently the Toyota we have, which is it's like the Corolla station wagon that's not available in the U.S., but it's a hybrid, and we've been told by the dealership that if you don't drive it frequently enough, the batteries just run out, even though it's full of batteries, and then the car doesn't start. I don't know how you make a car that does that, but constantly troubleshooting what's up with the battery. It's very annoying. And then of course, you call the roadside assistance people. They like kind of look at it in their big orange jumpsuit and everything works fine. And you're like,
I feel like Matt Ray's got a battery. Matt Ray's always got older cars. See, Matt Ray's probably got a battery tester or something in his garage.
Not a car one.
I was gonna say, you feel like somebody that like isn't afraid to crack open the hood and check what's going on in there.
Yeah, not so much anymore. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things. Like, I decided the personal effort wasn't worth it. So
he doesn't even want to manage. He doesn't even want to manage SSH keys, let alone car keys.
That's right. That's right. There you go.
Yeah. Well, my recommendation. We were talking about multi-tools a while ago, and I forget which one, but one of the listeners suggested this tiny pair of pliers that they carry around and find useful. And I have since procured some of these tiny pliers, and I recommend them as as a desk toy. I have no practical use for this, but they're very cute. They fit in your palm, and they're like those, I guess, plumber ones where you can like make the mouth bigger. And boy, they feel like they're really valuable and solidly made from some German tool company. So I feel like I'm going a little Bruce Sterling here, but I feel like I'm enjoying some piece of tools as art that I have no practical use for except for aesthetic enjoyment of it. And it's the Knipex tiny ass pliers. I don't think that's what they should have named them, but just look up Knipex Cobra and they're quite enjoyable to have. Speaking of things that are quite enjoyable to have, having had listened to Software Defined Talk podcast episode number 514, that is something nice to have, having had listened to it, which you have done. So if you want to get the show notes for this episode, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com/514 and find links to things we talked about, all sorts of stuff we didn't talk about, those conferences, things you can do. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, excellent as always. Thanks for everyone that was watching here in stream. Michael, appreciate freecycle.org. That's a good one. And then Cote, I like this. I don't know how to say. Is it Henning? I'll say his name, Henning. One, I like to quote Henning. Access management is 80% of everything. Could not agree more. But this is Cote. This could be a whole new segment. He says, Cote pronouncing German city names could be a section of its own. So that'd be good.
Absolutely.
So Cote, I guess you're German. Maybe it's not so great.
Not good. No. I'm
a lot of hard accents in there, right? Hard vowels, rather.
Yeah. I pronounce everything with an American accent. I think that's the problem.
I'm shocked that it was. To hear
No. It is. Oof, man. I was. I don't even remember the word, but I was getting my older daughter to help me pronounce a Dutch word the other day, and it was one of those things where like I said the word, and then she was like, no, and she said the word, and I was like, we just said the same word. And then we did that like 10 times.
It's a humbling moment, right? It's a very humbling, especially kids that have have picked up the accents of both languages. It's, I don't know. Unfortunately, I run into that too a lot. I don't know. I've just started not saying it. I don't want to like, because like how many times did you go back and forth before like you agreed that we would move on to another subject? It's usually 3, right? They'll say like, you have to, everyone has to repeat the word 3 times. And you're just like, okay, I understand we're not going to agree that I'm not pronouncing this correctly. Let's move on.
It's true. She was a captive audience at the time, so I think I got 5 or 6 in before she wrapped up. And it's also hard to tell because eventually she was like, "Yeah, you got it." And
yeah, just like I want to move on. Like, oh, just placating you a little bit. Like, oh, okay, you've been heard, Dad.
American
You've been heard.
Pronunciations.
Yep.
Well, here before we go, I just want to propose one thing. As you guys were as we were talking about changing car battery, I feel like what triggered it, Cote, you mentioned SSH keys. Like, I feel like we should come up with a set of like our own like heptathlon, but it's sort of like a combination of IT and tasks. This is like first you have to change a car battery, then you have to set up GitHub with SSH keys or something else. Then you have to do a basic plumbing task. Then you have to build a Docker container. It's sort of like constructing, like how many things can you do in your, you have to fix a bicycle chain that popped off. And you also have to reformat a PowerPoint so that it has all the correct fonts, right? It's like, I feel like this is like an Olympic event that we need to create. I want to get some momentum.
That's a great idea. I like this. This is almost like a Tim and Eric segment of like, or a Mr. Show sort of thing. But I think your battery, the battery thing is good. You know, it popped up. I'm looking at your battery charger, and the first thing that popped into my mind was like, a tire gauge.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for a car, like you got the old fashioned ones that pop out, and then you go look at the Amazon Marketplace, and they've got these digital ones, and all of them seem to have this notion that you can tell it. I think they use bars in Europe, but you can tell it the PSI you want and hook it up, and it'll just like inflate your tire. Yes. And I feel like that's some kind of like magic that I don't want to be associated with. I don't know what's going on with that. Seems weird, but I think that would be maybe one of the competitions is like, we're going to give you one of these auto pumping things without a manual, and you have to figure out how to use it.
How
And
to
we
do
might
it?
even
I
give
like
it to
it.
you configured using bars instead of PSI. And you've
I
got
like it. No, I like
you
that
gotta-
one. Well, luckily Costco has made that. They've installed those as the available for free. It's the greatest little invention of all time. You just walk up, 32, put it in. It shuts off. It's the perfect Costco thing.
I guess
love it.
it's one of those things where I was raised to not trust the built-in tire gauges at gas stations, so I don't trust anything involved with.
That's probably
inflating
true. It's
tires.
probably, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea if it's accurate, but I guess you're right. You probably should check it with a real gauge. But it's just like, oh, great. I can just pull up and I know I need 32. So it's good.
Yeah, love it.
All right. Well, listen, thanks for everyone watching. Special thanks to Michael. And I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, like a German city. I'm pronouncing this name wrong, but thanks, Henning. I appreciate you watching as well. So we should be streaming hopefully next week around this time. And until then, we'll talk to you later.
Bye.